That's weird with myself.
I'm gonna kick off showing something that's just cool. I stumbled on this today on Twitter. It's called stippled-image. I haven't implemented it yet, but there's a little glitch me thing, and what it does is it takes an image and then it runs a calculation and forms this interesting little dot-based version of it. So you might see this in like the Wall Street Journal a lot of times for like who the author of an article was. Will have this silly looking kind of a almost like newspaper print style article thing. So it wasn't, oh, there it is, live example. So the live example of it, like you can see it actually does the deformation in real time, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know that I actually want to use it then, because I thought it would just kind of take a picture of the, I have to do edit or remix. I didn't realize it was gonna like do that in real time. So I don't know how resource intensive it is. I thought it would kind of render it differently. But so I'm gonna change this to be a picture of me. So we'll see what the source picture is. It's very close up on my face, obviously. Those make for the best pictures for these types of things. So then I do view app, and it's hard to see because of how much distortion there is. You can zoom it out a bit and you can see my glasses because it has a set width. I think you have to give it a width ahead of time. Let me see if oh yeah, width. Okay, so if we did, and you can change the sampling. Like I haven't really played with this much, but if we change the width to, we'll say like 1,000, and then view app. So the sampling is the spacing of it. So you can actually mess with it. Let's make sampling more like 10 then. That'll probably make it more clear. There we go. So it's I don't know how, I mean, the fans on my computer are going nuts. I don't know if it's because of this little emulation thing going on here, but it is pretty stinking neat. So I did want to point to it.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be, if it's just a pure front-end component, just a pure web component, then it would have to be pretty dynamic like that. Were you thinking that it would sort of go away and come back with the final result?
Yeah, I thought it would be more of like a CSS transform almost, where like you could grayscale something where it would distort it. And I haven't dug into this much beyond looking at the initial entry point, but it's interesting. It invokes a worker.
There you go.
And I have not seen that before. So at least I've never, dug into something that does it. Now this is in TypeScript. So for those of you at home, TypeScript is the work of the devil. And so when Satan wanted to make code completely unreadable to junior developers while simultaneously increasing the tooling required to view that code, Satan decided to generate TypeScript or .ts. So I only somewhat joke. I hate TypeScript. I hate it. But it's just because it requires compiling. But you can see this is a vanilla JavaScript element in TypeScript. And then the interesting piece is with this worker script from worker, which you can see then it's just saying, hey, make a blob out of that and then render the blob. So the worker script is doing everything. Now, I don't know what the heck this is. I don't know what this is at all.
So
they clearly took this from somewhere.
Yeah, the worker this is how you're communicating between the DOM and the worker is with this message event bus, right? Mm-hmm. So for those who aren't familiar with web workers, it's just a way for you to do processing that's off the main thread. So if this were not being processed off the main thread, you wouldn't be able to do virtually anything on the page as this thing is resampling. So like you wouldn't be able to scroll around and you wouldn't have any JavaScript animations going on at the same time. So there's a good talk by who does the 203 HTTP 203 podcast from Google? Surma?
That sounds right.
Okay. He delves into this pretty in depth in a few videos and explains that like workers are a little bit slower, but anything that you can get off the main thread, your app will appear way faster to the end user. So yeah, I think web components are a good way of abstracting that from most people, because that's a confusing concept.
Yeah, and in this instance specifically, right, there's some serious math going on to manipulate that image, and then clearly, you know, even with kind of having it fizzle back in, you could just drop this in the page of a larger app, and that sending it off the main thread, that'll kind of figure itself out and add itself later without doing render blocking or being really CPU resource intensive, as that seems like it could be with a big image. So just wanted to point out, I thought it's pretty cool. So what I actually wanted to show, dipping into some code, is Mike and Chuck have been working on this, which I believe they've set up in Hax11. So it's just a static one page, and it's got some elements that they've used in previous work. Pull open code here, right? So there's a course card, and there's homepage banner and page top and page footer scroll button. So first of all, the scroll button they didn't make. That's something we just have on our generic element set that we use in other places. So that's a good example of like, I don't want to ever think about that concept again, right? So just throw down the scroll button. However, I have wanted to steal this header from their websites before. And I believe this is odl.science.psu.edu. That banner should look pretty familiar, right? So there it is right there. And it's got this nice offset area, and for all I know, it might even be homepage banner. Wow, it's like I knew that ahead of time. It's bizarre. So part of why I bring this up, right? Homepage banner is a pretty abstract name, but yet it's still, if I take out image and I take out alt and I take out a Creative Studio Classroom, it still says ODL and it has the ODL logo, and it has the text didn't update for whatever reason. So how I wanted to take this and make it something more abstract. So a lot of the ways that we end up working with web components will meet a specific use case. In this case, the ODL site, and then go, wow, wouldn't it be great to reuse that? And sure enough, we're right in position to reuse that on this other website. And then a lot of times I get bored or have had a terrible week and say, I need an easy win. And so I just blatantly steal Mike and Chuck's well-designed elements and repurpose them for everybody. So I've added it to the product card repo, which is off of LRN web components. So these are up there. It's actually in the product card NPM resource now, so you can yarn install it. So I'm going to fire this up, and now on our demo, previously we just had product card. So if you've seen some past episodes, we have this as a listing so that you can look through different elements in Hax. But I just started adding these other ones here, and I actually put a couple of them together so we could see how they stack. So one thing I really like, and I don't think this was their intention, Mike, you're free to chime in, but it actually, the way the logo works, it ends up making it look like it glues together with the thing below it, just because of how they've offset it. So I stacked 3 of these together. So we have the original one in this case, which is OER courses, but I've just re-implemented it using my more abstract form of the same tag, so that then I can have Films Learning Network with a logo and Hacks the Web with the logo. So what that ends up looking like it's called Product Banner is the name of that, that's right. So I took their web component and it was based on lit element, and I actually switched it to use simple colors instead. So I know we've brought up simple colors multiple times, but I realized we didn't actually ever show like what the big deal is with implementing it, other than like Nikki's awesome series of colors and CSS classes is usually what we get bogged down in. So simple colors is actually a base class, and it's built on top of lit element. I can actually trace into this and we'll see, well, there's a simple colors super class, and then we wrap that on lit element so that you can use either. So if you're using vanilla HTML, you could pull this in, which is why we make it the super class. Or if you just want to use the one that we already have, you can use that. And I also bring this up. I know I saw in some of Reed's code, he's using it as a direct element. So I will be curious to see Nikki's reaction to that, because I haven't seen us do that ever. But the big thing simple colors get you beyond all these CSS variables has to do with properties and then being reflected to attributes. So you can see there's a dark flag basically, and then you have these baseline properties like accent color, dark, and you can actually dig in and get access to the whole color set as code, but I think I've used that once. So the primary reasons I implemented are for these two. So I have accent color and dark. So then if you want to use that, because you're extending from a different base class, when I have my properties, I have to do this spread super.properties and then add my own. So what this is the equivalent of is more or less inheriting the properties from the element below it, in this case, simple colors. So imagine that this is as if I have accent color here, right? And the stuff written, but it's accountable back to one place. If Nikki decides to change that connotation in a intentional way, we just get that gain and everything that implements it. So then there's no default, but I set it to orange just to have one. And then similar to the properties, I got to inherit the styles. So then I do a spread of super.styles. This is also part of why when we build out static get styles, we recommend returning an array of values. You don't have to do that. Justin Fajani, who is the core maintainer of lit element, said there's no performance difference between just adding the styles one way or the other, but I think it's more readable to do it this way. So then I add in my styles. Now, when I want to use those colors in a meaningful way, I know we've gotten into, color overrides and when you name things a certain way. Let's not get lost in those details for once. So branding wrap is the piece that I enhance. So their baseline branding wrap is just this E2801E, which is effectively the color code of Eberly College of Science's Office of Digital Learning. Let's just say that's what it is. Well, I want to make it whatever the user has defined. So I could do that via CSS variable, right? So there's the ability to do product banner text color in this case. Or if we use Nikki's colors, we can do this pretty cool thing where we tap into accent color. So accent color is variable and it's pegged to that attribute changing. So if you say accent hyphen color equals blue, this variable is going to give you the 7th shade of blue versus green, red, orange, anything else that we have defined. And so what you can do is you can effectively programmatically set color contrast ratios between things. And so if I have default theme accent, right, 7, or if I said this was default theme accent 1, we could actually, and I'll save that so we can see what it does. That effectively allows us to tweak the difference between these colors in real time. So if I select this one with the logo, now in product banner, I can change accent color to be purple. And because that CSS variable effectively ends up getting changed, see, because of the way that that cascades, it just makes that the right color. Then if I say dark, I can tap into those colors in the same way and see it basically inverts them. But in this case, I've done it in such a way, knowing the way that dark operates, that I can maintain the accessibility of the other pieces of this. So now you can put product banners in dark mode and you'll see it inverts the color relationship here, but it also does it on the bar. The other piece where I just changed that value has to do with this outline. So you can set things to static values, right? So if I just said gray 1, in this case, right, that's going to be a gray outline. And then if we do, we inspect this and we tell it to be dark, it's going to also respect that, because gray 1 in dark mode is actually its inverse. So you end up getting black in this case. Versus before, I had a nice ratio between them. I'll show another one with the ratios in a second. So then I do a couple more enhancements based on what Mike and Chuck had. I actually do conditional rendering of the values. So in this case, and this gets a little lit element specific, so I try to avoid doing it as much as possible, but it does make it cleaner and more performant. This is going to say, hey, if there's primary text, then render a heading 1 with this class wrapping it. Otherwise, render nothing. So you can do ternary format directly inline. I do that for the image, or sorry, the image text. It's not the image. It does require an image, or it makes no sense. The image text, the logo, and the secondary text. So what that means is in here, I can go up to primary text of Hacks Camp. And here, let's do 2 window split so it's easier to see this. I'm going to do Hacks Camp. We'll do stuff, right? But if I just get rid of it outright, it goes away. So it's conditionally rendering that little blob there. So then I can do green, flip it over to that, and then I can do secondary text. Goes away. Right now I just have an image, you know, text and text. So maybe what I could do is we would have an implementation of this. We'd have primary text stuff. Maybe we don't actually end up having secondary text, but it still ends up, you know, being the same general tenor of what that visual asset is supposed to be. Then I also have support for dropping the logo. So you could just have the, where's a better one? Logo, there we go, okay. So let's get rid of that logo. And so now I have Elm's Learning Network. It has that little message on it. It's got this band. And it's got some half decent mobile responsive, right? So if we take the logo off, it doesn't stack, but it looks correct, right? So we're not trying to make it look perfect. We're trying to account for, well, what if you have content that doesn't have this? The conditional rendering is a nice way to cleanly be able to deal with that without getting in all kind of goofy CSS classwork. So that was the first one I ended up doing, and now it's called product banner. So we can add product banners to anything as a nice exercise in abstraction. The other one that I did is called course card. And course card is one that we've had previously in our setup. Now in here, it's this little card that says Astro, has the background picture, an icon, and then some additional text, as well as who's this by. I believe this was at some level taken from work that Arts and Architecture did. So we have, let's see if I can go to it. Yeah, okay, so this is a card that we actually use in production. It's a card, and the image, you know, lazy loads, and it's raised. And at one time, it actually did have the icon. I think if you click on it, yeah, if you click on it, this is a variation on it that ends up putting the icon as an overlay. So while not the same, right, there's some influence as far as those being very similar. So instead of this being specific to the OER site, and instead of me having that other card, I want to get rid of my other card effectively. So course card, we'll see, I've once again done the simple colors trick. I end up extending it and spreading the properties, spread the styles, and then I end up doing a consistent color ratio between different aspects of the element in the design. So what I mean by that is previously we had that border and I said, oh, well, just make it theme accent 1, or sorry, I had theme gray 1, right? And that made sure that the border was gonna be gray. But doing something like this, what this is effectively saying is, hey, the link, the color of the text in the link, make that the lightest possible thing, or sorry, darkest possible thing. Make that the darkest possible accent color. Now that could barely be detectable as being whatever the color is, if it's green, but it still has a hue of green. Then the background color is the lightest possible version of the same thing. So you can kind of make it look like it's tinted green without needing to worry about accessibility. And then I do the same thing with the border. So I make a slight variation in the border that's just a little bit darker than the background color of that. So end up doing that in a similar offsetting way in multiple places. Like whenever you have And I also, in their original element, they had a hover state. I like to make my focus, hover, and active states identical. So either I'll do it via JavaScript if I really need to, or I'll do it in CSS. Is I'll set the outline and whatever the action is for all three. That way, if you tab through or you hover over it, you end up getting the same effect. But I do a similar thing with that, right? So there's the outline, and then there's a box shadow, and these are also going to be throttled relative to the color in question. I do that for all of them, even the icon, and even the fill of the icon, which makes these rather interesting because we have SVG-based icons across the board. So using Nikki's approach and the SVG-based icons, we can make these nice tinted colored icons. So this is the original, right? And they're all blank, more or less, white with a light gray. This is what we're now able to do. So there's that original one, and this is the default. So like they could take this and implement it and get the exact same thing they want. However, now when we apply the other things to it, right, we can now take that, and there's the hover state, right? So there's a hover state that's slightly red or blue or green, or there's the defaults, or there's orange. These three are dark. Right? So they take that icon and they remix it to basically be that the interior of the icon is dark and then the fill is light. But then if we don't have dark on, then we get a darker fill and a lighter interior to it. So looking at those, right, we inspect it. I'm going to take this from red over to purple, and it's going to be the exact same color contrast ratios to things. I could also take this and put a dark flag on it, and then we have a dark purple one in this case. This is a approach I lifted because I like stealing concepts for myself. So I lifted this from RetroCard. So RetroCard does a very similar thing. I'll just actually show a demo of RetroCard. I don't need to go into the code because you see exactly the way that ends up working. So the same relationship I use in RetroCard, so that as you tab through the cards, you get this very similar type of like, well, do this flip between the colors, right? And that those are all ratio based. So that down in the DOM code, right, if I would change this accent color to be yellow or whatever, and it's not guaranteed that, it's always going to look wonderful with what these are, that, might still require like that. Holy crap. It's very blown out, but that's actually the point of the way that this one is designed, is to be blown out. So not all colors are going to work with this because you can see it's doing a opacity layer and grayscale to the images. And it actually has support for 2 images, so you can give this effect that something's animated. Like if you've seen people's company cards at like cool company X, and then when you hover over it does like, people in the call can see me. I'm doing a really weird face. So that's how I ended up approaching that. It's kind of more life cycle-y. I still have this, work in progress, basically, but they did a really good job as far as these looking good as the baseline. So then I'm just tweaking them really.
So with whenever you're choosing the right color for the let's say that you want to make sure that the outline of the icon is like a specific purple color, and you don't really care what the other colors are. Like you're not saying like it has to be a specific color, that like background, as long as the ring around that icon is good.
Mm-hmm.
So the process would be going to the simple colors grid and picking out like your perfect color, making that the property value or the variable value, and then just sort of.
Yep. Here. Oh, cool. Yeah. Bring up the demo.
So that's basically what I end up doing as now.
I built a demo.
In the case of your card, I said, oh, well, this is already well designed. There's an intentional ratio between these. So I kind of just guessed and said like, oh, that orange is sort of like orange 7.
Gotcha.
And so if I apply orange 7, then it'll probably look pretty good here and now. And then I go across and go, oh, well, orange 12 and orange 1. Okay. So yeah, I end up looking at these. the thing with Nikki's naming convention is, right, if I want this to specifically always be orange, right, I use simple colors, default theme, orange 7 in this case. Or if I want it to be variable, you can, and it's accent driven, then any of those are always simple colors, default theme, accent, hyphen, whatever.
And if you don't want a color to switch from dark to light mode, you know, maybe that one color stays, instead of default theme, I think I have it listed as fixed theme.
Yeah, it said fixed there, which I've never used, so that's good to know that that's what.
Yeah, for the Alley Media Player, I wanted the choice to make the transcript dark, either like always be light unless you specifically choose, and so I created this this fixed theme for it, because sometimes there are things that have to be in a certain color no matter what mode.
Right.
And it should give you, it gives you which colors can be used with which to maintain those WCAG 2.0 AA ratios.
Nice.
Keeping in mind that there are different ratios for small text and large text.
Right.
Yeah, it works really well. And now I've got a good enough handle from doing it a few times that I just, when I see something that has a decent color ratio or could use a color, and you guys end up using orange, there's some color, you know, Nikki always ends up tending towards, I can just basically steal that and then go like, well, okay, let's just instead make the default accent color orange and then make it 7 so it looks identical still. But then you've got that variability in it that someone could, you know, pick it up and say, well, I don't want it to be orange, I want it to be blue. And we go, okay, then make it blue. Like, it's not a total redesign of the asset.
That makes sense.
In future, I'd love to, I might create a second accent variable and like a third, like a primary and a secondary, tertiary. And eventually I want to be able to let, you know, developers self-define colors. The challenge is we don't want the average user to define all those shades. So I've also been playing around with the idea of using math to calculate, but that's down the road.
So yeah, I probably do some more, you know, I just threw this together pretty quickly, but I want to do some more to it to at least clean it up a little bit, but that is the general way that I end up implementing the simple color stuff. Oh, and you can see as I tab through, you end up getting that same exact class applied in style as the other one. So yeah.
Well done. Looks awesome.
That was all I had. And then the other nice thing with that, obviously, is that then we wire that up to hacks and we go, oh, well, yeah, you can use accent color. And now you allow a user to change the accent color, and it's really easy to set.
That would be a really cool option for looking at the sites when you go into Axiom.
Yeah, the reason I'm lifting that from what they've done is there's basically the way the Hack CMS dashboard works right now is it reads the file system at runtime and goes, oh, here's where these folders are. And then it reads off the site.json files and builds a new site.json that's fake on the fly. And so that's why you end up getting your listing of courses, or not courses, but like sites that you've worked on. So using an identical approach, or even putting it into that grid, like I used to visualize that data as cards. And then we got feedback from people like, I'm never on this page, I don't need it to look pretty. It's like, yeah, but other people searching for them do. So I want to make oer.hacks.pcu.edu have this nice landing page that is a curated list of things that we are saying are available from Hacks. And I say curated because we just had students turn in final projects, and Reed did final project as well last semester. So we've got roughly 70 or so OER courses that people did as their final project. Now, course, it's more like a little training module, learning module about a specific topic, but the topics are all over the map. As you know, I teach this course more and more. So this semester we had some I was sharing around that are about like how to be an adult. Like, hey, here's the things you didn't learn in school. You got to pay taxes. But it's a nice 10-page thing that's funny, and it has little self-checks in it, and it uses all the tools from it. So, you know, if we made a nice grid that just shows what all those are, and then people can peruse through them, I think it'd be a good entry point into. I'd also like to make a branding bar. I don't know if, Potter, if you've had a need for this at all, but a bar that you could not just jump between the courses, but like is very thin and could just be like a go back to the, you know, OER listing. But then on that, we could also put like a fork button.
You're recreating like the old school web ring.
Yeah, you're making, we've got my zine, and you're going to jump into my web ring with my zine, except in this world, you would be able to go to someone's course and be like, you know what, that's wrong, fork it, or do an edit and contribute and fix whatever the thing is. We have all the stuff in place. We just don't have UIs to surface it. So